Welcome to the Institute of Advanced Studies. This is our home for exciting collaborations, discussions, debates, talks. This is where we host all our international fellows, and this is where I think, I'm biased, but we have the best conversations on campus on the most important topics that really, really matter. I'm Ksenia Chmutina. I'm the director of the Institute of Advanced Studies, and it's my absolute pleasure to open our first research summit, and this is Africa Summit. It's been months in preparation, so thank you to the IAS team, Kieran, Connor, and Laura, and also our doctoral leaders, Will, Yajie, and Esther. It's been a huge amount of work, and you will see this week. And it's great to start our summit journey with the topic that really matters, with the topic that I think many of us don't really think about, but yet we should, given the future that we're having. So this summit is hosted together with our international special envoys, Hibbah and Sola, and they will talk to you shortly.
Yes, thank you.
And we're also absolutely delighted to host our international summit fellows, Sam and Cheryl. We have 2 more fellows hopefully joining online later this week. There's been visa issues, which is part of the reason why we really need to talk about Africa and borders and politics. But there will be more fellows and panelists joining online. A couple of house rules. So the summit is happening here in the International House, so please feel free to enjoy as much as you can the space here. There will be coffees and lunches throughout the next 3 days. There shouldn't be any scheduled fire drills, so we will evacuate you promptly should something happen. The toilets are just there outside of the door. All the events are hybrid, so we are here in person in the International House, and everything is also recorded on Zoom, and there are people, joining us virtually somewhere in the reality of Zoom. All the talks will be recorded, and we will be putting the recordings of the keynote speeches online, but the panels will be edited depending on kind of the wishes of participants and the content of the talks. So we can discuss that later on. Before I pass to our host, I also want to just really appreciate our amazing Kerri. In the exhibition that Kerri has curated for us, please go and enjoy it in our reading room. Again, it's our first big exhibition, and we're just so inspired. And yeah, Kerri, thank you so much. We will love it. Thank you. Yes, of course, yes. So unfortunately, Professor Dan Parsons wasn't able to join us because, coincidentally, he is in Africa. He is having holidays with his children. It's half term in the UK, in Morocco, I believe. But he has recorded a welcome note for us. So over to virtual Dan.
My name is Daniel Parsons. I'm the Pro Vice-Chancellor for Research and Innovation here at Loughborough University. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the Africa Summit that the Institute of Advanced Studies is hosting. I'm actually not with you, as you can see, and my apologies for that. And rather fittingly, I'm joining you and recording this in Africa. I'm on a family vacation in North Africa, in Morocco at the moment. So rather fittingly, as I say, actually on the continent that we're talking about over the next few days. In many ways, one of the key things I was keen to do through the nexus of the research and innovation core plan was really to bring to life global challenges, interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary working through our 3 institutional themes of climate change and net zero, sport, health and well-being, and vibrant and inclusive communities, and think about them in terms of geographical contexts. And in many ways, when we think about global challenges and the ways in which we need to address and solve the ways in which people are living and their well-being around the world, geographical contexts really matter. And that's why I was keen that through the Institute of Advanced Studies, we look at those those geographical contexts, different geographies around the world. Think about the global challenges that are facing communities that are living within those diverse geographies, and then think about how they relate to our core institutional themes. And one of the key things I was really keen on us doing is thinking about and working across the university, providing those links between different groups that I see in my very privileged role of going around the university, thinking about how people could work together across disciplinary boundaries in helping solve some of these big global challenges. So that's what the IAS Africa Summit is all about, and of course we have people from right across our two campuses working in contexts that relate to Africa that we'll hear about across the summit. Listen to the different groups that are working in different areas from sub-Saharan Africa and beyond, and then think about how perhaps we could work together in other contexts in addressing these global challenges, as I say. When we think about Africa as a continent, it's a continent of extremes, extreme poverty, extreme wealth of the people in terms of their capacity, wealth of the geology, wealth of the landscape, and of course, in many ways, this century will be Africa's century in terms of the population growth and the impacts that will have. But in turn, thinking about the challenges that climate change and the extremes that climate change will play in Africa. Some of the biggest impacts of climate change will be felt across this continent as well. So when we think about net zero challenges and addressing the impacts of climate change on societies around the world, again, an African nexus on that is incredibly powerful and incredibly important in terms of how we as a group of researchers and innovators address those challenges. Well, there's already lots of work going on in Africa that I see, from the modern energy cooking program to climate compatible growth, through to some of the work that we're doing in sport, health and wellbeing, working with those vibrant and inclusive communities in areas like Kenya, for example. But I see that I wanted more people to be aware of across the campus. So I hope it goes incredibly well over the next few days. I'm not sure when Ksenia is going to play this video, so I assume it will be close to the start of the summit, either today. I'm recording this on Monday, or through the other few days of the summit. But I hope it goes really well. I hope you enjoy the program that the team have put on. A massive thanks to Ksenia and all of the IAS team, and indeed all of those that have come forward and led the summit from Sola and Hibbah right the way through to the IAS Visiting Fellows that are contributing very heavily to the program. So thank you from me. I look forward to hearing about the outcomes and the sorts of things that were discussed across the few days. And it's bye from Morocco, and I hope the summit goes well. Take care now. Bye bye.
Okay, so I'm not a person known to write speeches. I think this is probably the second time in my entire life that I write something, so I would like to read it. My name is Oluwasola Daniel Afolabi, and you can choose your preference in all my names, but I like to be called Sola, so to make it a lot easier for people. And it's a privilege for us to be in this position today to actually realize our objective and the goal of bringing the first, very, very first ever African Summit. So I'm just going to read you some of the things I put together, if that's okay. So I want to say welcome. It's both an honor and a privilege to welcome you to our inaugural African Summit. And at Loughborough, we do believe in addressing global challenges. And we do this through collaboration, innovation, inclusion, towards the overall vision of creating better futures together. And today's gathering represents a milestone in the history of Loughborough University. I don't know, I said that with confidence, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was going to say it again. Today's gathering represents a milestone in the history of Loughborough University and a testament to our commitment to engaging with global challenges. Today, we've actualized the very, very first ever Africa Summit and the very, very first ever Regional Summit. And I think it's a strategic commitment to address some of the pressing issues of our time, which is climate change. But before I go further, I think it's good to probably just acknowledge people who have made today possible. First and foremost, I want to appreciate my colleague, Dr. Hibbah from Ghana. For the sake of our contribution and all the things she's done so far, I had to concede that Ghana jollof is better than Nigerian jollof. Now, that is a big statement, so I don't take it lightly. Kerri is disagreeing. Okay, I had to concede because of what she's done. For those who don't know the jollof war, you can meet us after and you tell us the number of hours you have, and then we tell you. And I think it's worth mentioning the help that we've gotten from IAS, because without IAS, it's good for us to have brilliant ideas, but operationalizing it and realizing it takes a lot of resources. And for Ksenia, we say thank you very much for hosting us. And Honor, Laura, thank you very much for, please appreciate them, because without them, I think it's also worth mentioning that we're grateful to Loughborough University for giving us the mandate of special envoys for us to be able to realize something like this, because if we don't have that kind of position, we'll not come up with some crazy ideas and agenda. And I think all the envoys, I think I've seen one other person, we are enjoying the time to it, right? We're enjoying the role. So why this summit? I think the urgency for this summit is really evident and timely. I'm going to read a quote from a podcast I usually listen to every day. It said, for years, the Horn of Africa has suffered from a brutal drought that have devastated crops, killed livestock, and imperiled millions. That's from a podcast I listen to every day. And across sub-Saharan Africa, a lot of communities have faced some of the severe impact of climate change, prolonged droughts, resource scarcity, and habitat loss. Many in the region have faced unforgiving drought, flooding, and other extreme conditions that have impacted lives and livelihood. Yet, these communities have survived. How? I don't know. A lot of them have managed to pull through. And some of the challenges we are facing now, they faced it and they've pulled through, even with limited resources. And we talked about quite a lot of how these communities, we can talk about how these communities survive and things like that, from rainwater harvesting to drought-resistant crop variety. While at the front, they've been innovating and they've been adapting. And we think it provides a very, very valuable lesson for us in the UK and beyond. Why? We can all agree that the effects of climate change in this country are no longer theoretical. In this country, we are now facing climate extremes, and over the last few years, we've seen unprecedented warming trends. And I think in 2022, we broke the record of 40 degrees. And I think I was watching the TV when I think BBC was trying to capture that period. And I laughed because 40 degrees where I did my national youth service is perfect weather. And your 40 degrees was just 20 or 30 minutes. We experienced it, and I think our fellows in the house would probably relate to it. So when you talked about 40 degrees and everybody's all over the place here, and I know it's different geography, a lot of people have survived that. I think there was a time we're sharing something it was doing the rounds on social media where people would just break egg in Juba in South Sudan, and they will fry it using in the sun. Right. So how do people survive? How do people cope? Bear in mind, they don't have AC, they don't have air conditioning, but they've been able to use local solutions to address local problems. And I think the question is, how can we learn from these people? How can we better prepare ourselves here in the UK for some of these realities? Recently we're seeing some riverbeds because of prolonged droughts and because of prolonged. And there are some things that have not happened in the UK before, but climate change is actually, it's changing. And we feel that can we reverse the knowledge transfer trend? We keep talking about Africa having problems. Well, they are surviving. A lot of them are coping. Can we learn one or two things? Can we have experts in the field that could come and tell us one or two things that we can learn here and start building and start preparing for the realities that we are going to face? We started facing it. I mean, if it was 40 degrees in 2022, we don't know what will happen next year. It might be 43, it might be something. Well, these are conditions we were not prepared to cope with. It's okay for me, 40-something degrees is perfect. I just came in from 38 degree in rural Ghana last Saturday, so I'm used to those kind of weather. But not all of us are prepared for those kind of realities. What can we learn from this community? That is the reason why this African Summit, that is what we are trying to explore in this African Summit. And we feel that it's worth mentioning that this is not an isolated event. And our journey toward this summit began with a vision, which is encapsulated in the phrase, Loughborough in Africa, Africa in Loughborough, which is a two-fold commitment to making Sub-Saharan Africa a central part of Loughborough global engagement, and at the same time, enhance the visibility of Black and African researchers like Dr. Kerri. I'm not into exhibition, but I think I went around and I think it's fantastic. How can we enhance the visibility of Black and African researchers who still remain sometimes institutionally marginalized in positions? But that's not even the focus. I think the focus is how can we amplify the footprint of what we are doing in Africa and what Africans are doing here. Is there a scope for us to exchange ideas? And I think that is what we want to focus on this week. Since we were appointed, I think it's, please, Hibbah, if you allow me, let me gloat a little bit, let me brag. Since we've been appointed, we focus on strengthening strategic partnership with Sub-Saharan Africa researchers and leaders to enhance our university reputation and visibility. And for the first time, we've hosted and engaged 2 African High Commissioners. The High Commissioner of Kenya was here on campus, was unprecedented, it's never happened before. And we've hosted the High Commissioner of Ghana. We went to visit special visit in London, which I think when we started this role, our goal is just to increase the visibility of what Africans and what Loughborough is doing. Because sometimes to pronounce the name in Africa, it's even pronounce the name here, it's a bit of a challenge. But we've been doing a lot in Africa. But people operate in silos. Can we bring people together? That is what we want to achieve this week. So there is no silo. That's the only rule I'm going to say. There's no silo operation this week. We have to collaborate. We have to talk because the challenge is enormous. And through our close collaboration with the UK government, we've been able to facilitate some very high-profile collaborations. We've supported over 80 delegates in terms of cross knowledge exchange. And earlier this year, as you can probably note, we took the Vice-Chancellor to West of Africa. So 2 things happened on that trip. One is he's the very first Vice-Chancellor, I think he did say, he's the very first Vice-Chancellor to have visited the region in the existence of this school. We felt a bit good, and I think the other bit is I never knew the Vice-Chancellor liked taking pictures with policemen and that's the second thing. Don't tell him, don't tell him. I think he tweeted it, right? Okay. Well, I think it was monumental for us because it actually shows that we've been in this region. We've been working for long in this region, but some of them don't even know how to pronounce our name. We want to address that. That has been the focus of our work as envoy. So as we journey through this week, please, I want us to form strategic partnership. I want us to sustain the work. You heard Dan talking about the challenges in Africa. Don't think about it in isolation, because if flooding is happening in that place, what do you think will happen to displaced communities? They move, and what they move towards there, and then we'll be complaining and all of that and all things. So I think I want us to look at it as an integrated community, and what can we do together to address some of these global challenges. I look forward to a productive week, and dare I say, Africa Summit 2.0. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I have the honor to introduce our special invited guest. But before I do that, does anyone know what the theme for Black History Month is?
Reclaiming narratives.
reclaiming narratives. Do you see the alignment with this? At the time we're thinking about this, we didn't know the theme. It's just a coincidence. I mean, it just goes to show that this event was really meant to be at this time. Because really, I mean, we hadn't thought about reclaiming narratives, you know, but it aligns perfectly with everything that Dr. Sola had shared. Right, so on that note, please, can we welcome Professor Cheryl? Rather than reading her bio, I wanted her to do us that honor of telling us about who. We want you to come and sit with us here, Professor Cheryl. And then we have Professor Codjoe from Ghana. Get an extra seat for Professor Richard, but
We can get the extra seat, that is not a problem.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Here we go.
Yeah. They're going to. Do you have Dr. Lane online? No, she's not on. So yeah, so many others going to join us, but today we're just going to introduce the people we have with us in the room. Okay. All right, Cheryl, do you want to start, please? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, and thanks for inviting me to this special place. It's really an honor. I suppose, or I'm assuming that you saw a bit of my bio on the adverts or whatever we want to name it for this prestigious event. But I put a little bit of a note together because I wasn't sure exactly what was expected of me. So let me just start. The request to share something about oneself for 10 to 15 minutes. For many people, it might be an easy, straightforward question. But for me, it always sends me into a spin. Of course, what we share and what is often crafted and carefully selected, we often learn from. And we also often learn professionally from Google about oneself. So I was pleasantly surprised when I think it was Kieran asked me if I would share who I am without a PowerPoint for 10 to 15 minutes. So I don't think we need 10 or 15 minutes, but I'll share. So when the request was sent by Kieran, I thought I'd sent a short bio, but then I realized that you needed a bit more, some more detail. I like that, as I said, and I welcomed the request. And as a feminist scholar, I believe the personal is professional is political. And I'm also, let me also just say, I'm always impressed and fascinated about how persons from outside the continent will say, oh, I like fish and chips and I'm married to so and so. And many of us from the continent, and I can't speak for all of us, but I'm speaking for many women, we often do not want to be seen as less than serious, as a less than serious academic, and we often only share what is deemed to be serious professional information. And research has also shown, as I think you know, that when many men, not all men, but when men have a pic of their family, for example, in their office, and in the office, they are seen to be a good family man. But when a woman academic has a picture of her family or her children displayed in her office, it's often seen as that she's more interested in her family than being a serious academic. That is old research, and I don't think it has. Hopefully it's changed a bit, but I don't think it's changed majorly. So given that the personal is political, is professional, I'll share with you, I will share with you very shortly that one or two of my childhood memories is of not being a full citizen in my home country. I remember as a 5-year-old, my mother and my grandmother and my father talking about our forced removal from a historically Black area to an historically, to from a historically integrated area where everybody was living to a historically Black area, and we lost our homes. In fact, I was forcibly removed from our home when I was 5 years old because we were not classified as white. And when I met Ksenia, we were part of a group project, and I actually wrote an article in our feminist magazine, and I'll share it with you, on the impact of those forced removals on my family, who were not white, and my father was also Muslim. And that's the effect of the apartheid government. So to just share with you, one of the recent projects that I've been involved in was when I was the Africa research person, the head of it for GRIP, and Ksenia was one of the advisors. It was a UK funded money, and essentially that project, it had partners in Africa, Caribbean, Latin America, and South Asia. And our particular focus was on resilience, and with a special emphasis on gender responsive development, ways of knowing and doing. And we tried to understand and enhance people's resilience and support and understand the development of Indigenous knowledge and sustainable development. Let me take a few steps back. I finished at a historically Black high school. I have a master's degree in psychology and a PhD, a doctorate in psychology. I served as a dean of a university. I've served as a deputy vice-chancellor and a head of college of humanities. And in the last few years, I've stepped out of those positions and I've come back to scholarship and I currently head the Gender Justice, Health and Human Development Division and the Research and Doctoral Leadership Division at Durban University of Technology. I'm currently, my PhD years ago looked at what it means to be Black, South African and lesbian, and discourses of invisible lives. And I'm currently 20 odd years later, I'm working on a book entitled The book is titled The Way We Were, Black Lesbians in Africa or South Africa in the 1990s. I couldn't publish it then because for security reasons for Black women who I interviewed at that stage. I've also in recent times been one of the lead investigators evaluating the social sciences in South Africa. I've done a lot of work, of course, given my position as Dean and Deputy Vice-Chancellor and as a professor, but I've also been a scholar activist. I came to academia as an activist, and I was part of the underground African National Congress years ago. And so my experience in academia, I still try and hope and believe that my work and my contribution as a leader can be transformative and work can be impactful on poor communities globally and of course in Africa. I'm in the process of starting a project which explores the career aspirations of young girls at high school in rural Lesotho. And I'm also looking at the experiences of Black queer women, immigrants in South African cities. We are going to be putting that through the ethics committee at later this month. And interestingly, you know, we all have to find funding to do what we are doing. So I and a global group being called Impact Amplifier have recently applied for funding to a French funder to investigate the safety of African girls online, because girls from the continent are being abused on various online networks, given that we're working in an AI generation. The outcome is going to be today. But we're not very hopeful, but we're crossing our thumbs for a range of reasons. So yes, again, just thank you for allowing me to be here. And as the week goes on, I'll get to know you and you'll get to know me. And that is just a little bit of a shout out as to what I've been trying to do over the last few decades.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so thank you very much. First of all, you can see the contrast between myself and Cheryl already. I'm old school. I didn't want to carry my laptop from the hotel. So I went into this deep, this morning, early morning, trying to think about, because I also like to write things. Sometimes typing, you do lose out, because you can type very fast. But if you have to take the pain in writing, it makes you think about the things you want to put on paper to communicate. So that's why I have my paper this afternoon. Let me first of all say a big thank you to the IAS for inviting me here. It's my second trip here to Loughborough, and so I came around the same time the last time I came, and so it looks very familiar. I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and I hope my short stay here and the interactions we'll have together will be quite fruitful for the future. Okay, so also a brief on myself. My background is in population studies because I'm a professor of population studies at the Regional Institute for Population Studies at the University of Ghana. I'm also a provost for the College of Education. And by the way, I have no training in education, but I had a college that is a College of Education. The College of Education is one of 4 colleges that we have at the University of Ghana. My Bachelor of Arts was in geography, just my major, but also minored in religions and history, okay? And then I went on to do my Master of Philosophy in Human Geography from the University of Oslo in Norway, a very cold place. Talking about temperatures. Talking about, did you say 38 degrees?
I was coming again.
Okay, I'm going to present to you tomorrow on Wednesday, I guess, some startling temperatures that people are experiencing in Ghana.
He was in Somaya.
I was in Somaya.
Over the weekend.
Oh,
maybe
my
last
goodness.
week.
Okay. But I will be presenting some of the researches from Tamale in northern Ghana.
Right,
So we will see some of the extreme temperatures.
I'm grateful for where I was there.
Yeah. So I studied in Oslo for my Master of Philosophy and then proceeded to Bonn in Germany for my PhD, also in geography, but a minor in soil science. So sometimes I describe myself as one of the very few academics who have gone the full gamut of the disciplines. So started off in the humanities, history and religions, through social sciences, geography, and then ended up, because my PhD is from the School of Mathematics and Natural Sciences at the University of Bonn, and also doing soil science. So, it's that broad range of the expertise. I wrote my PhD at the time 2 years after this famous book. I don't know if some of you will be familiar with. I think the National Research Council of the US had published a book titled People and Pixels. People and Pixels, and linking, those one where they were using technologies like remote sensing, geographical information systems to link social science, okay? So that motivated and inspired me to do my PhD, which looked at population and land use, land cover changes in the Volta Delta. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the Volta Delta, one of the largest deltas on the African continent. So I describe myself as somebody who looks at the population and environment nexus. So that's what I see as my area of interest. I was appointed a lecturer at the Regional Institute for Population Studies in November of 2004. And so I guess for some of you it will be a bit old, long time ago now. And but the Regional Institute for Population Studies, was sponsored by the United Nations, precisely the UNFPA. It was established as far back as 1972 to train African demographers on the continent. But although over the years, the institute metamorphosed itself into other things, but basically, that was how the institute was established. And so, based on my PhD, kinds of earlier publications I looked at were looking at population land use dynamics, so population agricultural land use, forest land use, etc., etc. And these culminated in the publication of an article in Population and Environment Journal on population agricultural extensification and intensification, with an article I quoted with one of my colleagues, Richard Billsborough, who, is based in the Carolina Population Center, University of North Carolina. In that article, I mean, it was the first time that we looked at, Malthusian theory, Bosropian theory, and Davis had come in with this multifaceted response, which was basically looking at demographic issues. And my colleague Billsborough also introduced the economic angle to this argument. And so that was the first article that actually put all the three major, theories in a developing country setting. In fact, we even looked at these kinds of relationship, agricultural intensification and extensification. We looked at migrants and non-migrants, and even dared to write an article which looked at whether migrants are exceptional resource degraders, compared to non-migrants, because there were other articles that had argued along that line. So as it's typical, I transitioned along, after the earlier works on the population environment linkages, and now move more into climate change research, which also falls within the environmental issues I looked at. And so the very first climate change work I did was with my colleague Petra Chaket from Penn State University. And when we got significant funding from the United States Agency for International Development to establish what we call Climate Change Learning Observatory Network in Ghana. And this was, I think, as far back as 2006. And through that work, we published an article, I think, in the climate change, also article titled Floods in the Sahel. Floods in the Sahel, floods in drylands, which is kind of an oxymoron. But in more recent times, we see that, the Sahel that is so much, dryness and droughts have been attributed to the Sahel in the past. But as we speak, because of the effects of climate change, the Sahel itself is experiencing a number of flooding events. Then I moved on to look at climate change and food security issues also, because I'm touching on some of these things because my idea is that maybe there are some people gathered here who may, have specific interest in some of the work that I have done, and we want to, have collaborations on that. And so we looked at climate change and food security issues in what we call the Farm Plains region of Ghana. Is one of the major food baskets in the country. And then moved on from there to look at climate change and human health in Accra. This was an IDRC, International Development Research Center of Canada sponsored project in 2009. But I'm not going into too much details of all these projects, maybe just mentioning a few things along the line, the major publications that came out of some of these projects. In 2011, I was one of probably, I think about 6 or 7 Africans who received the IDRC's African Adaptation Research Centers of Excellence projects. This was major funding for these projects. That project we also looked at impacts of climate and health. So among some of the health Some of the diseases we looked at was malaria, we looked at diarrhea diseases, we looked at schistosomiasis, and then we looked at cerebrospinal meningitis. I don't know if some of you are familiar with some of these diseases, but the last one I mentioned, CSM, is a deadly disease. That's normally related to extreme heat conditions. And every now and then there are outbreaks in northern Ghana of this disease. And once it happens, it kills quite a number of people. Then I moved on to, again, successful with another IDRC project. This time they call it a career project. I don't know, some of you may have heard of it. That was Collaborative Adaptation Research Initiative in Africa and Asia. This was in 2014. And I, together with some colleagues from the University of Southampton, Robert Nichols, and Exeter, Neil Aja, we were successful with looking at what we call the DECMA project. The DECMA project. So we looked at deltas, vulnerabilities, and climate change. So whether people were using migration as an adaptation strategy. The major, we published a book, of course, a number of articles, but for me, we published a book entitled Deltas in the Anthropocene. Deltas in the Anthropocene. I think that was the major thing that came out from that, co-authored by Robert Nichols and Elijah. And in that book, we also have a chapter on where people live and move to in deltas. Other projects I've been engaging is on a MISTI project, Migration, Transformation and Sustainability, which is sponsored by the Swedish International Development Agency and the Belmont Forum. And then one linking climate change, habitability, social tipping points, sponsored by the UN, EU, with colleagues from University of Belgium and Hugo Observatory Network. Of course, I also did some work with colleagues on in Southampton here in 2017. We had a GCRF funding looking at building research capacity for sustainable water and food security in drylands in Sub-Saharan Africa. We called it a Brescia project. Maybe some of you heard of it. Currently, let me talk about my current projects working on, and then I'll move with my relationship with Loughborough University. Currently, the University of Ghana has won a $28 million grant from the MasterCard Foundation to look at what we are calling University of Ghana Collaborative on Climate Research, Climate Resilience and Sustainability. There are four main components of this project. It's going to have one, first of all, training and capacity building. So we're going to sponsor the funding for master students, PhD students, quite a number. I don't know if some of you are aware, but these days MasterCard is putting a lot of money in Africa and other areas in these kinds of training, capacity building, and all that. There will also be a component on research and then networking as far as these having incubation hubs and entrepreneur building the youth and all that. At the University of Ghana, I will be leading the team on the research component. The other current work I'm engaging is also with colleagues from Loughborough University. We call it the Ithaca project, which is immobility in a changing climate. So we are looking at people who do not move despite all the issues that climate change is bringing. And the question is, why don't they move? Is it that whether there are people who do have the capability to be able to navigate themselves in some of these terrains, rough terrains that we do. And then also, finally, the Welcome Trust project with colleagues from Exeter, looking at evaluating health impacts of climate adaptation strategies. So the climate adaptation strategies, sometimes that community states do have health impacts, and we are looking at that. Now, my association with Loughborough University began in 2017, when together with Professor Kate Goff, I understand she's now moved to Loughborough University, and some of my other colleagues, Rob Wilby, Ben Roberts, Sam Kayaga, and Paula Griffiths. Okay, so we had a British Academy sponsored project. We called it the VWEC project, which is vulnerability to extreme weather events in cities, implications for infrastructure and livelihoods. Then we continued with another project we call REFIT, also sponsored by the British Academy, which is reducing the impact of extreme heat to improve well-being in cities. I'll be talking on this research, some of the work in the keynotes that I have scheduled for, I think, Wednesday in the morning. Aside all these academic things, I've also been involved in a few non-academic things. So the Regional Institute for Population Studies that I talked to you about, I was director for that institute for 6 years. And then I became the president of the Union for African Population Studies. I don't know, since you are interested in Africa issues, you may want to have some dealings with the African population, Union for African Population Studies. I was vice president and president for that union, I think from 2012 to 2019. During that period, we organized the 7th and 8th African Population Conferences. The African Population Conference is organized every 4 years. It's a leading conference for African demographics on the continent. The 7th one was in Johannesburg, and the 8th one was in Entebbe, Uganda. It's organized every 4 years. And currently we do have significant funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to do that. That conference is very important because we do sponsor a lot of early career researchers in Africa to go. Because, you know, early career researchers in Africa are quite disadvantaged in terms of, you know, having networking opportunities for networking and attending some of these conferences. These days it's very difficult to come to Europe. You know, I was trying to come on this journey with my son, okay, but he was not granted a visa, and I knew he wouldn't because one, he's unmarried. He's unmarried, you know. Even though he's a pharmacist by training, he's unmarried. And so I think the visa officer in one of his response to him was that you don't have ties. You don't have any ties back at home. So why would I allow you to go to the UK? There's, you know, you don't have any commitment coming back to, you know. So I say this because most of the LA career researchers on the African continent fall into this category. And so we, you know, as a union and African Population Conference is very key to us to give them this kind of opportunity. I also do some editorial work, as we all do, but I serve as an editorial board member for Regional Environmental Change Journal, and then also +1 Climate and Frontiers in Climate Change. Let me round up by saying a few things. I was giving, you said 10 to 15 minutes, so I hope I'm still within time. A few things also that I do. I've also been a member of a technical advisory group on African Climate Mobility Initiative, and this is an initiative of the African Union. Also an eminent member of the Africa, I don't know what that means, of the African Scientific Advisory Committee of Climate Research for Development. This is an initiative of the United Nations Commission for Africa. And then in my own country, I've been part of looking at our intended nationally determined contribution of enhanced adaptation to climate change for, you know, the Paris Agreement, and then also been very instrumental in Ghana's contribution to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is, I don't know if you, it's a brief bio.
Understand why we strategically invited, you know, these people to be part of the summit. We didn't already tell Richard to prepare for this. We put you on this, and I apologize for this, but if you could also give me
Sure, thanks very much. Delighted to be here, really honoured as well. And it's wonderful that this is, that this week is on, so I'm great to be part of it. I'm a sociologist, professor of sociology in the School of Sport, Exercise and Health Sciences, here in Loughborough. I've been here since 2011. Previously, as you might guess from the accent, I'm from Aberdeen, and I've done my sociology training there. And I was employed there until 2006, and then I moved to Durban for 5 years. So I've played those 3 posts. My big research interest, my obsession really research-wise, is sport. Since day one in terms of doing a PhD. So I've also had a particular interest in the kind of global aspects of sport. Trying to kind of combine sociology, bits of anthropology, bits of human geography, and a bit of political science in there as well. To make sense of how sport is become globalized, and also I think looking at the kind of the social injustices and inequalities that are in there as well, and latterly how sport has been used to promote development. So I have these postcards. I'll give you guys 4, 5, 1 each. So here in Loughborough, I also head the UNESCO chair. And physical activity and education for development, which was established about 2 years ago or so. And that's got a team of about 40 odd members of staff on it, including Paula Griffiths and including Hibbah. So we cover lots of different disciplines, and the particular focus is on how these different fields of activity, sport, physical activity, etc., are used to promote development. And with UNESCO, of course, the major focus UNESCO have is on promoting and ensuring the delivery of the Sustainable Development Goals. And they've got 2 real strategic priorities running up until, I guess, 2030. One is Africa, and the other is gender equality. So there is this huge focus on Africa, and therefore there's a big interest in terms of facilitating research, but also political engagement and academic engagement, etc., with Africa. As part of that work, I also represent the UK at times on SSEHS, which is a French acronym. The English translation of that is the Intergovernmental Committee for Physical Education and Sport, which has got 18 nations on it at any one time. Up to you're on it for 4 years, and that kind of shapes and drives UNESCO's policy around sport and physical education in particular. So the UK is on it, and some African states as well, of course. Kenya are very active, and Kenya may well host the next big UNESCO kind of sport conference sort of summit, as it were, and that's due in probably by 2027. Also, Côte d'Ivoire are really quite active as well at the moment. So that committee is facilitating UNESCO's big policy around sport for development, which will run for another 8 years or so. And that's called Fit for Life. So if you go on UNESCO's website, you'll see this information around Fit for Life. It's a really ambitious program. And then we look at this kind of small unit that UNESCO have got. Are you guys really going to deliver this? I mean, yeah, just hopefully they can, but they have the resources for it. And Africa is a huge focus on that, looking at the different ways in which sport, physical activity can be used to promote development. For example, in relation to health, in terms of health education. Morten Schmidt from Laureus will speak about another area of work, which is sustainable livelihoods. How sport can be a kind of platform to draw young people in, and direct them in towards more sustainable livelihoods and employment and education training, for example. Peace building, just gender equality, and kind of all the SDGs really, eventually using sport and physical activity to reach such a young population as well. Because as you were saying at the outset, it's an extremely young population, and Africa is essentially coming up, and then sports will be one of the key ways to reach them. So that's the work that's going on there. Yeah, we've also got some connections as well through that with different organisations, agencies in Africa. The University of Zambia very kindly supported our UNESCO application. One of the persons who came from there to meet with colleagues in sport in Oslo anyway, is now the head of the sports division at the African Union. So we've got some almost like some connection. He was actually, we're trying to get him to come here for this event this week, but he couldn't make it because there was a big African Union event taking place with the Minister of Sport, I think in Addis Ababa. So that was a hold up there. But and also in terms of my kind of research and connections, I've mainly done research way back in Zimbabwe, which was quite a kind of a 4 or 5 weeks there in around about 2000, which was quite an interesting experience just after the elections, somewhat contested elections that took place. As a kind of ethnographer, if you like, I was walking around the streets of Harare one day taking photographs, and a soldier thought that this looked a bit suspicious, this guy taking photographs. And then he gave me that, that's, come over. And my explanation of doing visual ethnography wasn't that persuasive, obviously. So I was then arrested at that point and taken in. So that's one of the kind of memories of doing research in it also maybe made me a bit of a more favourite Bulla Way. So I became a Highlanders fan. Oh, the Bulla Way team rather than sorry. So yeah, that was a really very, very interesting experience. And then latterly I was doing some research in Cape Verde and also in Mauritius. I mean, I was quite a lucky chance to go there, but the agencies are connected, but especially one in Mauritius will be coming to visit next week. And they do outreach work in Mauritius, United Through Sports, so they're going to try and get some student volunteers to come along with that and maybe work with them in Mauritius, some of the other locations that are based in South Africa. On a final thing, yeah, we'll have this session tomorrow morning with a focus on sport, health and development, which obviously has got big UNESCO connections. But going back to the kind of earlier research I was doing, some of the projects and publications that led to included a volume, an edited book on football in Africa, published around about 20 years ago now, and translated into Greek. So obviously the Greeks are particularly interested in African football at the time. So that's great. So that's all for me. I'm really looking forward to the session to come on.
Thank you. All right then. So Sola and myself sent out special invitations to 2 of our professors. I don't know the statistics, Sola, of how many Black professors we have in the UK, but certainly in this university we don't have a lot of professors. And so please help me welcome Professor Amon.
Before you say so, can I just say the theme for this week stems from our conversation with Professor Anom, and he's been a massive supporter of this week. So yeah, we want you to say a lot about yourself.
Well, pressure on me then. Well, my name is Amon, as you had, Ksenia from Zimbabwe. So when I said you are supporting the wrong team, I support Dynamos. So anyway, I spent some time in Loughborough, a very long time. That's where I started my career, actually, my academic career. So I'm a professor of corporate governance and international business in the business school. I've been here for a very long time to note. I think I came around 2004 as a PhD student, completed, and then became a full professor in 2011. Finished my PhD in 2007, then stayed until 2011 professor. Then 2015, I went to the University of Birmingham, where I taught for 5 years as professor of strategy. And then 2020, Loughborough said, "You want to come back?" And I did come back because this is my academic home, I guess. So yeah, these 2 guys, these 2 academics, very young and bright young academics from Africa, they came to my office and said, "We want to do this, and what should we do?" And we had a very good discussion, and I'm really happy that it has really given birth to this meeting today. And so well done. And I look forward to 3-4 days of, is it 4 days? 3 days of really good discussion around the issues of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me and to say a few words. So I'm Cheryl Williams. I'm from Jamaica, and I've been in the university since 2002, where I did my PhD in photovoltaics, angle of incident effect. But my passion is teaching. So when I had the opportunity to switch over to teaching, I did that. And somebody said to me, well, you know that you've done that. That means you will never be a professor. And I thought, okay, that's all right. I'm happy with what I'm doing because that's what I love. So I'm honored to say, or I'm blessed to say that I managed to get a professorship in teaching practice, and in mine is engineering education technology, because my passion is about using technology to support education for students as well as for academics to make their life much easier and to use time much most effectively. I have a great passion for seeing more young people, more people from Black students, Black kids, Black women becoming in education. So I do a lot of work out in schools, lots of outreach activity. And I manage with Kerri, who is doing such a brilliant job with the exhibition and a lot of other exhibitions. We both went on a program called 100 Black Women Professor Program now, because in the UK, at that time, there were only 25 female professors all together. And with the program and other things that's happening and more talking about it, the number of female Black academics are now 76, 77, and I'm waiting to see Kerri join that. So things like this is a really good place and space for people to showcase and to work with, to bring collaboration, to expand the sphere of what influence of what you do. So I'm really pleased to be here. I love it to hear that's all that's going on. I'll be joining more when we do the net zero and the vibrant community. Not that I'm not interested but I also want to just say, if you're a Black female academic or male academic, Black, if you need some support, so find some support. And if you are already a professor or you have some opportunity to help, then pat somebody on the shoulder, because somebody did that to me, and say, come on, you can be a professor. Because sometimes you lose that dream and you need somebody to help you to see that that's possible. So whichever area you're on, if you're waiting to get towards it, or if you are there and you can bring somebody up, I believe that we work together, bring together, help us support each other. And the world is big enough for all of us to be able to do and dream and be whatever we want to be. So it's a pleasure to see this happening. I'm fully in support. And as I said, just ask me if you want me to help with anything. So I look forward to seeing it being a wonderful success, and also for number 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I forgot someone else. I apologize. What's the name again, please? Cheryl.
No, Kerri.
Kerri. Me?
Kerri.
So Kerri, I'm so sorry. We need that professor title soon. Yes, go and get it soon.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I feel like I've been introduced and over-introduced today, so thank you so much for the warm welcome. So my name is Kerri Akiwowo. I am a senior lecturer in textiles based in the School of Design and Creative Arts. I've been at Loughborough since 2010, also to come and study and do my PhD here. So as part of the Africa Summit, I think most people have had hopefully a little glimpse of next door. I have had the privilege to curate culture through African lenses. Okay, so this is an eclectic showcase located next door, like I said, and I also take this opportunity to thank Hibbah, Sola, and everyone in IAS for the support and the opportunity to do that. So the exhibition is a display of objects and images, which you would have seen by the Loughborough University community. So that's staff, fellows, IAS fellows, doctoral researchers, some of whom are here today, as well as our alumni, okay? And these works represent outstanding achievements. You'll see lots of craftsmanship, also business and enterprise activity with reference to the successes and the impact of this these endeavors. So hopefully you recognize that as you go around and have a look at the exhibits. The common thread amongst all of these situates Africa, of course, at the heart of their inspiration and their existence, either through a focus on African culture, people, place, environment, landscapes, etc. Equally, each of the exhibits in some way intersect with one of our university's 3 strategic themes, one or more actually. So as we know, climate change and net zero, vibrant and inclusive communities, and sport, health and well-being. All of the projects are sort of in some way in silo, but as you go around, you can see that there are these synergies and connections. So it has been a real privilege to set those up, bring those together and actually see the crossover in some of these projects. There is a little bias because you'll see my name pop up quite a lot. But that's, you know, on this occasion, I'm going to own that and not apologize for that. But that also is testament to some of the university's values, being collaboration. I collaborate a lot with colleagues in and outside of my school and externally, as well as more broadly, you'll see there's authenticity, there's creativity, and all these wonderful things in those exhibits. I'm not an expert on everyone else's projects, but if the authors or the owners of this work are not in the room today, I would be more than happy to make any introduction. So please do ask me any questions, and if I can't answer, I can link you up to some of the people there. And lastly, just to say, this is the formal launch of Culture Through African Lenses. So please do take a look and enjoy the show. Thank you very much.